When you think of a leader, what defines them? Is it courage, strategy, unshakable faith? Joshua, one of the most fascinating figures in the Bible, embodies all of this and more. He not only led Israel in epic battles and took possession of the Promised Land, he also demonstrated that true leadership begins with a heart dedicated to God. But what made Joshua stand out? And how did a young assistant to Moses become the man chosen by God to fulfill a centuries-old promise? Get ready to uncover the real story of Joshua and what his journey can teach us about leadership, faith, and purpose. Joshua, one of the most remarkable figures of the Old Testament, is known in the Bible as a leader of extraordinary faith and courage. His original name, Hosea, was changed by Moses to Joshua, meaning the Lord is salvation. This seemingly small change was no coincidence but a symbol of his divine mission. From a young age, Joshua proved himself trustworthy, a leader in the making. It makes us wonder, how might small changes in our lives, such as a name or a word of encouragement, be signs of a greater calling? Before taking on leadership, Joshua was an attentive observer, learning directly from Moses. He stood by his mentor during pivotal moments, such as on Mount Sinai, where Moses received God's commandments. This close relationship not only prepared Joshua for his future role, but also shaped his character. It reminds us that the greatest leaders are first great learners. Who are the people in your life you can observe and learn from today? Joshua was not chosen by chance. He had already demonstrated a heart full of faith and courage. When sent with other spies to explore Canaan, Joshua returned with a report brimming with confidence in God's promises, while others focused only on the challenges. This positive outlook set him apart as someone who trusted fully in God, regardless of the circumstances. Are we looking at our situations with eyes of faith, or are we only seeing the obstacles? Another fascinating point is how Joshua was commissioned. He didn't simply inherit Moses' position. He was directly instructed by God to lead the people. Imagine the magnitude of such a responsibility. But God, in His wisdom, encouraged Joshua with one of the most powerful phrases in Scripture: "Be strong and courageous." This teaches us that when we are called to something, God provides the support we need to face any challenge. The transition of leadership from Moses to Joshua is a lesson in succession and continuity. Moses prepared Joshua, ensuring he had the knowledge and experience needed to guide Israel. This challenges us to think, how are we preparing others to take on responsibilities? Are we investing time in equipping someone to carry on the work we've started? Moreover, Joshua embodies the perfect balance between humility and authority. He was a strong leader, yet always submitted to God's will. This characteristic is rare and valuable, especially in a world where power often corrupts. Joshua reminds us that true leadership is about serving God's purpose with integrity and faith. And so, with a prepared heart, a courageous spirit, and a clear calling, Joshua took command of Israel, ready to lead the people into the Promised Land. Let's explore how he stood out as a military leader and brilliant strategist. Joshua was not just a spiritual leader. He was also an exceptional military strategist in the Bible. Early on, he demonstrated his abilities by leading Israel in battle against the Amalekites while Moses interceded with God on the hill. This combination of practical action and divine dependence defined Joshua's entire journey as a commander. He understood that every victory came not only from well-executed strategies but from God's guidance and favor. It reminds us that even in our efforts, seeking divine direction is essential. Upon assuming leadership of Israel, Joshua faced the daunting task of conquering the land of Canaan, a territory filled with powerful nations and fortified cities. His approach combined courage and obedience. He led the army, but he always followed God's instructions, as seen in the conquest of Jericho. Instead of attacking with brute force, Joshua obeyed God's order to march around the city, trusting that God would bring down the walls. And indeed they fell. What an incredible example of how obedience can lead to results beyond human logic. Joshua's military leadership also highlights his ability to inspire confidence in his men. He knew that morale was as crucial as physical strength. Joshua constantly reminded the people that God was with them and that his promises would be fulfilled. This teaches us that, whether leading a team at work or facing personal challenges, encouraging and inspiring those around us is key to success. Another fascinating aspect is how Joshua dealt with opposition. He faced coalitions of Canaanite kings who united to destroy Israel. Yet he never hesitated. Through intelligent strategies and, more importantly, with God's help, he conquered cities and defeated armies that were larger and better equipped. This challenges us to face our own giants with faith and determination. What is holding you back today? Perhaps it's time to confront it with the same confidence Joshua had. Furthermore, Joshua always gave credit to God for his victories. He knew that no matter how important his leadership was, the true commander was the Lord. This teaches us about humility and gratitude, even in our moments of triumph. How are we acknowledging God's role in our achievements? Perhaps it's a good moment to reflect and give thanks. Joshua's military leadership also shows that he never acted alone. He was surrounded by leaders and warriors who shared his vision and commitment to God. This reminds us of the importance of building a strong, aligned team. Who are the people around you helping you achieve your goals? And, more importantly, how are you strengthening those relationships? And so, after each victorious battle, Joshua continued his mission with the same confidence and obedience. But his responsibility went beyond military leadership. He was also a spiritual guide, constantly encouraging the people to follow God's ways. Let's now explore how he combined spiritual and physical leadership to shape Israel's future. Joshua was not only a brilliant military leader, but also played a crucial role as Israel's spiritual guide. After taking command, his main mission was to ensure the people remained faithful to God and the law established in the Bible. His leadership wasn't limited to the battlefield. It also involved upholding the covenant between the people and their Creator, ensuring Moses' teachings were followed. He understood that without obedience to God, all military victories would be in vain. From the start, Joshua made it clear that Israel's success depended on their faithfulness to God's law. One of the most defining moments was when he publicly read the law to the entire nation, reaffirming their commitment to the divine covenant. This action reflects the importance of constantly remembering the values that guide us. Are we taking time to review and reflect on the principles that govern our lives? Perhaps it's time to open the scriptures and renew our commitment to God. Joshua was also a practical example of spiritual leadership. He didn't just talk about the importance of obedience. He lived it. His decisions were based on divine guidance, and he consistently sought God's direction before taking action. This challenges us to ask, how are we making decisions? Are we involving God in the process, or are we trying to solve everything on our own? Joshua's story teaches us that depending on God is not a weakness but the greatest strength we can have. Another fascinating point is how Joshua encouraged the people to abandon any form of idolatry and focus solely on God. During his leadership, Joshua repeatedly warned against the influence of neighboring cultures and their religious practices. He understood that faithfulness to God was essential for Israel's prosperity. This reminds us to be vigilant about the influences around us. What is diverting our focus from God today? Joshua's spiritual leadership also involved encouraging the people to trust in God's promises, even when facing challenges. He frequently reminded Israel of the promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, reinforcing that God was faithful and would fulfill everything he had promised. How can we apply this trust in our own lives? Perhaps it's time to reflect on God's promises in our journey and believe that He is working, even when we don't see immediate results. Joshua also understood the importance of passing on this faith. He didn't just lead his generation. He worked to ensure future generations would also know God's ways. This challenges us to think about the spiritual legacy we're leaving behind. Are we taking time to teach and inspire those around us, especially the younger ones, to follow God's principles? And so, while spiritually leading the people, Joshua was also strategically guiding the conquest of the Promised Land. Let's now explore how his faith and leadership resulted in impressive victories and ushered in a new era for Israel. The conquest of Canaan is one of the most extraordinary moments led by Joshua in the Bible. Under his leadership, Israel crossed the Jordan River and began to realize a promise made by God centuries earlier: to establish His people in the Promised Land. This journey, filled with challenges and victories, demonstrated how unshakable faith in God can turn the impossible into reality. Joshua knew that despite facing more powerful armies and fortified cities, God was ahead of the battles. The story of Jericho's fall is one of the most iconic. Instead of adopting a conventional approach, Joshua followed God's strategy: march around the city for 7 days and, in the end, blow the trumpets and shout. To human eyes, it seemed absurd, but the walls fell, proving that obedience to God surpasses any earthly logic. This challenges us to trust God, even when His instructions seem illogical. What walls in your life need to fall? Perhaps it's time to march in faith. Another fascinating aspect of Canaan's conquest was Joshua's alliance with the Gibeonites. Although deceived by them, Joshua honored his word and protected Gibeon when it was attacked by other kings. This action shows that integrity and honor are essential, even in difficult situations. How are we handling our commitments today? Are we being faithful to our words and values, as Joshua was? Joshua's strategy also involved defeating coalitions of Canaanite kings, which required military intelligence and, more importantly, trust in God. In a remarkable event, he asked the sun and moon to stand still to secure Israel's victory, and God answered his prayer. Imagine the boldness of making such an audacious request. It reminds us that there are no limits to what God can do when we trust Him. What bold request do you need to bring to God in prayer today? The conquest of Canaan was also evidence that God fulfills His promises. Joshua led the people to take possession of what had been promised, but every victory depended on his obedience and faith. This teaches us that while God's promises are guaranteed, our cooperation with Him is crucial to fully experiencing them. How can we align our actions with the promises God has made to us? In addition to military victories, Joshua ensured that the land was distributed among Israel's tribes, consolidating God's purpose for the nation. He understood that every conquest had a greater purpose: establishing Israel as God's chosen people. This challenges us to look beyond our personal victories and ask how they contribute to a greater purpose in our walk with God. And so, with the land conquered and the people established, Joshua turned his attention to something even deeper: the legacy of faith he would leave for future generations. Let's explore how his final words still resonate as a call to faithfulness and obedience. Joshua's legacy is one of the most profound in the Bible, and his famous declaration, "As for me and my household, we will serve the Lord," Joshua 24 verse 15, is an eternal call to faithfulness. After leading Israel in epic battles and settling the people in the Promised Land, Joshua knew that the real challenge was not military but spiritual: maintaining the covenant with God in a land filled with temptations and external influences. He teaches us that leadership is not just about accomplishments, but about shaping hearts to follow God. This declaration was not just an inspiring phrase, it was a lived commitment. Joshua understood that faith begins at home. He led his family and the nation by example, showing that serving God is not passive but an active, daily choice. This challenges us to reflect. How are we leading in our homes? Do our actions reflect a genuine commitment to God? Joshua also understood the importance of renewing the covenant with God. In his final words, he called Israel to choose whom they would serve, making it clear that neutrality was not an option. This emphasis on choice reminds us that following God requires decision and determination. How are we reaffirming our commitment to God daily? Perhaps through prayer, reading the Bible, or sharing His Word with others. Another powerful aspect of his legacy was the honesty with which he warned Israel about the dangers of idolatry. Joshua knew that the greatest enemy was not external but internal, the human heart prone to stray from God. He challenges us to identify and confront our own modern idols, whether materialism, the relentless pursuit of approval, or dependence on things that replace God's role in our lives. The phrase, "As for me and my household, we will serve the Lord," also highlights the power of individual leadership. Joshua did not wait for everyone to follow. He took responsibility for leading by example. This teaches us that each of us has a role to play, no matter how small it may seem. Where can you start making a positive impact today? Perhaps at work, school, or in your own family. Furthermore, Joshua's legacy reminds us that faith is not about perfection but perseverance. He faced challenges and moments of uncertainty but remained steadfast, always turning to God for guidance. This encourages us to do the same, even when we face difficult or doubtful times. How are we cultivating this perseverance in our walk with God? And so, as Joshua completed his mission, he left an example that echoes through the ages, serving God wholeheartedly and leading others to do the same. His life is an invitation for all of us to reflect on how we are living and the legacy we want to leave behind. Joshua's story is more than a series of military victories. It is a call for each of us to live with faith, courage, and purpose. What are you doing to lead in your own life and family? Perhaps it's time to reflect on Joshua's famous declaration, "As for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." It's not just a phrase. It's a decision that transforms lives and generations. Why not start today? Think about how you can apply Joshua's lessons. It might be choosing to trust God more amid challenges, prioritizing His Word in your routine, or encouraging others to follow God's ways. Joshua's life shows us that leadership begins with small steps of obedience and perseverance. Why not take the first step now? If you felt inspired by this story, don't let it pass. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and explore the videos appearing on the screen. Each one is designed to help you grow spiritually and understand how your life can be part of God's plan. See you in the next video. Until then, choose to serve the Lord wholeheartedly and be an inspiration to those around you.